Today we are going to rank every single one of the nearly 30 weapons in Apex Legends. No BS, let's get right to it. In F tier, or the tier I sometimes call give me anything else please, we do have a singular weapon of the P2020. It may be an F tier, but I will say the P20 actually does have some decent damage per mag, but for the most part, that is going to be where the positives end. This little P shooter is really just a holdover till you find the R99 or even RE45, as both of these weapons are just way more natural to use, and they do have a better time to kill. The best thing about the P20 is that it functions as an additional backpack to store and hold your attachments till you find those other light ammo weapons. I do have a disclaimer on the P20 is that if you do find hammer points, it actually makes the gun a fair or fine weapon as a swap to secondary to tap, fire, and finish the remainder of an enemy's health. Because of this, I give the P2020 with hammer points a C tier rating, but otherwise, basically everything else in Apex is just better. In D tier of bad but sometimes usable, we have a very similar weapon of the Mozambique. I actually think the Mozam is more of a sleeper weapon than a meme weapon that it used to be. The big thing going for this little shotgun is that the gun does do more damage per hit than say a P20, making it a better swap to and one tap someone down secondary weapon. The Mozambique is actually the shotgun with the best range as well, conducive to full hits up to 45 or more meters away, which is actually kind of crazy, but at the end of it, the other shotguns are just better in overall damage per mag or total DPS, which makes them much better to use. Like the P20, I give the Mozambique a soft B tier rating if you do find hammer points, as a 60 damage health hit is pretty good. A previous Juggernaut locks in the C tier of fine or okay weapons, and this is the Devotion. Both the Devo and Havoc are in such a weird spot ever since they made the Turbo do one less damage when you do have it equipped. This means by equipping a Turbo and making the gun more or less way more usable, the gun becomes worse, and at this point, many of the other SMGs have a way better time to kill, and many of the assault rifles have better range and handling. The only time a Devo really becomes good is when you do get it fully kitted, but this takes a lot of attachments, and even after all of this, a Nemesis is just gonna be better. If you do want to go in head first and fight a ton of enemies at once in like a small building, the Devotion is pretty crazy when enemies are grouped together. Second to the Devo is the final hammer point weapon of the RE45. Some may be loving the RE45 this season as it is back on the ground, but there's a lot of reasons why this gun should be in the lower tiers. For one, it doesn't have as good of a time to kill as many of the SMGs because its fire rate is pretty slow. Second to this, it's a pistol, and thus its magazine is fairly small, although not bad, but the total damage per mag is not really there. And thirdly, you are not getting any range benefits of something like an R301, which does mean it's missing out on this as well. Because of these things, the only thing the RE45 does very well is its handling, as it's very quick to draw and reload, but you still aren't going to outkill someone with a car or an R99. The only time this slightly changes is when you do get hammer point rounds, and if you do find this, I actually think it goes from being an okay to nearly amazing gun at the B+ rating. At B tier, we have a few weapons which are decent, but for the most part, these guns are outclassed by others. As with most LMGs, the Spitfire can be a pretty great weapon, but its slow time to kill leaves it on the floor over many other assault rifles. However, the one thing going for that Spitfire is going to be its massive mag size, as a 50 round level 3 mag Spitty can actually go crazy on full squads, but you will not be beating anyone in a one-on-one that has a flatline, 3-1, Nemesis, or really any SMG. Because of this, it's hard to recommend using a Spitfire outside of maybe a pub game where you want to brainlessly fire rounds. It's also a pretty good gun to farm really high damage games, which is something to consider if you are looking to farm more 4Ks. The first more or less real shotgun on my list is going to be the Mastiff at B tier. The Mastiff is actually one of my favorite guns to run in the secondary slot, but it doesn't really do anything well outside of a couple scenarios. It does not have that hard-hitting power of a Peacekeeper or the overall damage output of an EVA 8, which does make it hard to recommend. The couple things the Mastiff does have going for it though is its ease of use due to the horizontal pellet spread and that reload of one round at a time, which means you will more or less have a consistent damage output since you don't have to reload a full mag every single time. This actually makes the Mastiff the preferred solo versus squads weapon since you can continually output damage and apply pressure. Beyond this, I'd hold off and pick another shotty or an SMG. The first sniper on the list is going to be the longbow at B tier. It hurts me to put the longbow all the way down in B tier because it's actually one of my favorite long-range poking weapons, but I can no longer really recommend the longbow over a lot of other longer to mid-range weapons. There's just nothing that the longbow does special anymore. The G7 or Triple Take are just way better at damage output and can hold more ammo in reserve. The Sentinel is better at being that hard-hitting gun, and the Charge Rifle is just better at getting easy hits and farming Evo shield damage. The only thing that the longbow has over the other marksman weapons is the ability to throw a sniper optic on it, but I rarely find this to be needed, and a 2 to 4 times really works just as well. Our first B+ weapon narrowly missing out on the A tier is going to be the alternator. There won't be many of these floating around in the first half of the season, as I cannot really see why anyone would want to craft an alternator. The alternator is good at damage output, and if you want a longer range and easier to use SMG that works pretty well in the very close range, then this is a great gun to use. But expectations need to be had, as an R301 is going to be better at range, and the R99 is of course going to be better in the time to kill. The big thing the alternator does have going for it is the fact that it's a great off-drop weapon, but since it's not on the ground during the first half of the season, it's kind of pointless as an SMG right now. Another LMG makes this list, and it is the Rampage. The Rampage has a lot of great use case scenarios, but again, it lacks in the time to kill aspect, making it hard to recommend as that mid-range beaming weapon. What the Rampage does have going for it is its great base damage per round and a good magazine size that lets you farm higher damage games. It also has low recoil, meaning it's so easy to use and hit really at any range, close and far. If you are playing ranked, I think this gun is actually pretty good, and I would probably slot it in the A tier, as it's good at conserving ammo nicely with its lower fire rate, and you got that really good overall damage per mag. If you don't mind wasting inventory slots to carry thermites, this gun also has some viability in the close range, but I don't like wasting inventory on this, and because of its slower time to kill, I don't really recommend it over many of the other weapons. The Devotion's counterpart of the Havoc is also at B+. The Havoc works incredibly well if you treat it more like an SMG than you do an assault rifle due to its recoil. However, as soon as you do treat it more like an SMG, you are then going to get beat out by others in that close range. This means if you can use the Havoc at considerably further ranges than most, you're actually going to be getting to both worlds, and if you can control the recoil, it is more like an A weapon. The Havoc for me is not ranked higher because simply, if you want an energy assault rifle, the Nemesis is far superior at the moment, and there really are not too many scenarios where the Havoc is actually going to be the optimal choice. However, if you want a huge mag for an assault rifle and increase in your play options of that hybrid mid to close range, then the Havoc can be pretty fair for this. Topping the B tier is going to be the 30-30 repeater. The repeater narrowly misses out in the A tier because of a few reasons, but it is a fine option if you are looking for something to poke enemies at range. It's not a bad weapon, but there are just so many better options in the game right now, and really the 30-30 is dependent on getting headshots and having a skull piercer to make the most of its effectiveness. It is a heavy ammo gun, which is great when comparing it to the longbow, but the charge up feature of the 30-30 will be make or break for some. The repeater does fit a slightly different role than some of the others, as it can be fired pretty quickly, and you do get to reload 2 rounds at a time, meaning less downtime, and you will be able to apply pressure more regularly. In A tier are the amazing guns that are mostly meta, and we start things off with the EVA 8. The EVA 8 has a lot of viability when it does come to a secondary weapon that can simply just decimate enemies fast and efficiently. I put the EVA 8 lower than the PK because it does not have that same flexibility where it can be used at both long and close ranges. However, the EVA 8 is one of the best secondary guns if you are looking to go straight into a fight with the squad, as the damage output is very high and it's going to let you do more damage faster than something like a Peacekeeper or even a Mastiff. From the EVA 8, we do have the highly divisive and pretty annoying Charge Rifle. The Charge Rifle does miss out on S tier for my list, which won't be the same as some other lists on the internet, but this is really because the Charge does not have that all-around use where it's going to be that run and gun weapon, and it's not going to be as good at endgame when you need something like a 301 or an R99 and you are missing out on having that second weapon. This tier list is also not just for ranked, but for general meta of the game, and I don't think I've been shot more than a handful of times by a Charge Rifle in my hundreds of pub games this season and thousands last season. That being said, you cannot deny the Charge Rifle's ability to apply pressure, slow enemy teams down, and just farm damage for your team's shields. If you are solely playing ranked, I do think the Charge is more of an A+ to soft S tier weapon that at least one person on the team probably should run. And I will mention that the reduction of 1 round per mag from 4 to 3 from last season is actually a pretty big deal, and it is a pretty fair nerf in my opinion. At the same tier as the Charge Rifle is the Sentinel Sniper Rifle. The Sentinel is the closest you can get to a Kraber, and this does make it a very solid weapon that actually has quite a bit of versatility between using it as a close range heavy hitter or a long range precision warrior. The Sentinel no longer needs a gold Evo shield, and since it does only take 1 shield cell to charge at any time, this for me is finally enough to make it ascend up the ranks. My biggest problem was always that you had to eat through shield cells to get the maximum potential out of this gun, on. I do not think the Sentinel is that competitive when you are looking to actually farm damage or take fights if you do compare it to a G7 or a triple take, but it has a very unique playstyle that most are going to find pretty fun to run. This does roll us right into the G7, also at A tier, and I think this gun is still a beast civil weapon that is truly good for either pubs or ranked Apex. It also has a lot of flexibility between the both close to longer ranges, and it's something that everyone should consider using. The fact that it is a light gun also helps a ton, as you can carry more ammo and really not have to worry as much about running out as you would say with a sniper. The G7 with a double tap is still pretty wild if you can manage to connect a double headshot in there, as it has enough power to nearly top a Sentinel sniper rifle, but with the added forgiveness where you don't really need to be worried if you are missing shots. We now move into the A+ weapons, which are the borderline S tier guns, and there are a lot of them. It's worth taking a second to say that basically all the guns in Apex are usable, and I think this goes to show with just how many B to A to S tier weapons there really are. The final shotgun or premier secondary weapon for some is the Peacekeeper. The Peacekeeper does have a few great things for it, even though it is being outshined by the SMG secondary meta we are kind of in. For one though, you will be able to conserve your inventory space since you really don't need more than a single stack of shotgun ammo. This helps a ton in ranked where maybe you can't loot as frequently. And second is that it is the biggest hitting secondary where you can pull it out and have the best chance to one-tap someone down that you couldn't finish with your primary weapon. The PK does miss out on S tier simply because its raw time to kill or power is not the same as other weapons, and it really is just a secondary gun, but anyone who can get accurate with this gun is going to be absolutely deadly in their one-on-ones. Surprisingly, I am now putting the care package Hemlock at A+. I think the Hemi is a great weapon, but I have a lot of issues with it being in the care package. The main being is that the Nemesis is virtually the same gun and it can be found on the ground. Second is that if you get a Hemlock too early on in a game, you're gonna run out of ammo. There is simply just not enough rounds in reserve for the amount of ammo that you will have to go through. The Hemlock though is a really strong, incredible weapon that is worth using if you don't have something that is fully kitted, or if you need to swap off of your gun during the late game, maybe due to ammo shortage, or maybe you need to be a little bit more versatile. But overall, the Hemlock I think is just not really worth picking up over a Nemesis, and I think it's a little forgettable as a care package gun. Another gun that can join the Hemlock in the land of misfit weapons is going to be the Volt. The Volt used to be so good as that weapon you must use, as it is and was always easy to use, and it had an incredible time to kill and great range. It still has all of those perks, but the big thing is that it lacks time to kill when you do compare it to the other SMGs of the CAR or the R99, which does mean you're gonna miss out on a fight if these other players are using the more popular SMGs. The Volt I think should still be considered for anyone who might want to run, say, a Volt with a Peacekeeper for really aggressive pushing, as that extra range you can get from the Volt is very nice, but the R99 is definitely reigning supreme at the moment. The Volt is great, but outside of its ease of use, it doesn't have many special use cases. Back to the care package weapons, we do have the Kraber on deck. The Kraber used to be an instant S tier weapon, but long gone are the days where you could assure yourself a one-shot headshot. The Kraber is still a great pickup to apply pressure, as any body shot from this gun does take out an enemy to force them to at least pop a battery, and if not, pop a battery and a med kit. Not a lot to say on the Kraber. It's a tough gun to balance between having something that is insta-kill and something that is worth picking up. In a similar sense, the Bocek is also something that is a little bit hard to rank. Unlike, say, the Hemlock, I actually think the Bocek is a little bit better when it does come to having ammo that lasts a little bit longer. I don't think the Bocek is competitive at endgame, but its silent-esque nature makes it very hard to deal with, and an accurate Bocek user can be very frustrating for enemies to deal with. Much like many of the other care package weapons though, you may still have a problem towards the end of your game if you do run out of ammo and you need to swap weapons. On a sidebar though, it's kind of weird how Apex and Respawn have dug themselves into a hole of having a whole weapon in the game that is based around a singular type of ammo of the arrows. It makes me think that it's probably not coming out of the care package anytime soon. Returning to the top of my list for the first time in quite some time, probably since season 11, is going to be the triple take. The triple take saw some nice buffs this season, making it much easier to use than it already was and much more effective. Starting off though, the ammo change from using 3 rounds to just 1 is actually huge. This lets you apply a ton more pressure over time, and I'm kind of surprised they didn't swap the triple take back to a sniper weapon. The second thing that makes the triple take so good is that it truly is a brainless gun to use. You don't need to be that accurate due to the pellet spread, and connecting at least one of these 3 energy pellets means you are forcing an enemy to at least pop 1 shield cell. This makes the triple take one of the best guns to apply pressure and farm damage. Not to mention its harder hitting headshot or even full body hit makes it a very versatile weapon in the close range, kind of functioning similar to an EVA 8 in terms of damage per shot. If you haven't used the triple take in a while, I would highly encourage you to check it out again right now it's pretty incredible. Capping off the A tier is going to be the Prowler SMG. This gun is so close to being an S tier for me this season, but I figured I would put it just into A+ because it doesn't have the same time to kill as some of the others, and its base mag of 20 is actually pretty tough to use. If you can get any mag, but specifically a purple or gold mag to get that 35 round mag, the Prowler becomes actually crazy, and it's one of the best weapons in the game to take on multiple teams or multiple enemies at the same time. Its total damage potential cannot be understated, but the big thing for a lot of people will be that it is a burst weapon, and thus they won't even consider using it because of its semi-awkward feel. It would be cool to see the select fire return to the Prowler, but I highly encourage everyone to use the Prowler, as in some sense, I think it actually has more potential than some of the SMGs above it. S tier is up, and these are the weapons that are top tier, insane, and more or less must-use weapons if you do find them. These guns also best describe the current state of the meta when it does come to things that you will see enemies using. Our first weapon is going to be what probably is the most iconic Apex weapon, and it is the Wingman pistol. The Wingman continues to reign supreme as that gun that many use, but it does require a ton of skill to actually make worth using at times. However, if you can get your aim down, tapping enemies into oblivion can be a breeze and very effective. The Wingman doesn't need a ton of ammo to perform, a ton of attachments, and really, as soon as you pick it up off the ground, it does become instantly useful, which maybe cannot be said about many of the other S tier weapons. Do not sleep on its ability to tap at range or even close range hipfire, as really this little pistol is one of the most versatile guns Apex does have to offer. The R301 definitely is not as good as it used to be after last season's nerf, but it still is a must-use gun if you are looking to put Apex into easy mode. It's the first gun I do recommend to any new player, but that does not make it bad. The R301 can even be viable in the closer ranges, but unlike, say, the Flatline, I think the 301 is a lot worse without attachments, and you really need that level 2 blue mag to actually make it go into a competitive role in Apex. There's not a lot to say about the R3. It's good, it's always been good, and I don't see that changing. The previously mentioned Flatline is also rocking S tier, and in my mind, it does edge out the R301 slightly. It has a little more potential all around. It has a bigger base mag and a level 3 mag and more total damage per mag, and its time to kill is slightly just better. The slower fire rate also means you won't be chewing through ammo as fast, but the big drawback for this gun is that it is harder to use due to its recoil, but even this is manageable once you do get some practice in, and I kind of think the Flatline is the gun everyone really needs to be learning how to use right now, as if the Nemesis does get any sort of nerf, I can see the Flatline being extremely dominant. It isn't the best assault rifle right now for time to kill, but the Flatline is still a top dog worthy of a spot in your loadout. Even though the R99 had a nerf this season of 1 bullet per mag, it was not enough for the Car SMG to overcome. The Car also gets slotted in the straight S tier, as it is one of the best guns and most flexible guns in Apex. The big pro is that it does let you run either light or heavy ammo and mags, which does mean that you're going to be faster to get this thing kitted out than an R99. The time to kill may not be as fast, but it's still going to beat out most weapons in Apex. I do think it's harder to use, which is unfortunate when it comes to the control of the weapon compared to an R9. If you want something that is reliable, still an S tier gun, then definitely use it, but the R99, in my opinion, is just better to get enemies down faster. Hopping up to the S plus tier, we do have a few guns in this category, and we do have the previously mentioned R9. The R99 definitively is the fastest killing close range weapon that you can't pick up off the ground, which makes it the premier secondary or even primary gun most will want to run this season. The R99 is a staple of Apex Legends, as it always has been, and it's incredible as an SMG to run, but I think the biggest pro for this thing is going to be that its recoil is very consistent and simple and easy to control. This means better 1 mags at further ranges and less missed shots if you are struggling to control with other weapons. Not much more to say about Apex's OG. Learn it, use it, and you are going to excel. Our second to last gun is something that should not be a surprise, but it is the Nemesis Burst Assault Rifle. There is a prototypical combo that you need to run this season. It is going to be the Nemesis with an R99. The Nemesis is the best gun for range, as it has the best time to kill for an AR, and its magazine size is honestly pretty huge at all levels. The only problem I do find with the Nemesis is the lack of energy ammo at times, because everyone is running energy, and it does go down really, really fast. I actually thought they would have nerfed some sort of aspect of the spin-up feature, but it seems Respawn wants to let us run wild a little bit longer with Apex's newest assault rifle. For my god tier weapon, the weapon that I deem to be the best gun in Apex Legends right now, it is the L-Star LMG. Anytime you can get a weapon in the game that has bleed through damage means you are simply just exponentially increasing your time to kill on all enemies, and this means at endgame, when enemies are forced to stack together, if you have an L-Star, you can go literally crazy and wipe enemies with a singular mag. Even this is aside, the time to kill on the L-Star is great, and you can shoot so many more rounds before it does overheat than you used to. If you haven't had a chance to run an L-Star this season, try to find it, as it is incredibly fun. But if you want to improve at Apex fast, check out this video for 100 tips. Hit that like button, sub for more, and I will see you in the next one.